want to introduce Anthony. Today we have an incredible speaker. I am so excited to introduce to you all Anthony Corraro. Anthony is a printmaker who currently resides in Kansas City, Missouri, originally from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and has exhibited nationally and has been a recipient of numerous awards for his work throughout the Midwest, thanks to his unique process of ephemeral printmaking. He earned his BFA from Oklahoma State University and his MFA from Wichita State University, and he has been actively furthering his creative practice ever since. Recently, he finished a year-long residency at the Lawrence Art Center in Lawrence, Kansas, and now is a lecturer of foundations at the Kansas City Art Institute, where he's engaging in his other great passions of teaching. His work is pretty amazing, so y'all are in for a treat. Please give it up for Anthony. There we go.
Thank you. Hello. Nice to meet you all. Thank you so much for braving the rain to make it out here today. I suspect this might be a requirement for some of you, but I still appreciate the effort. My name's Anthony Corraro. I'm a printmaker by trade, but I like to think of myself as more of a conceptual artist. But printmaking is, I keep kind of like being drawn back to it. Whenever I was going through like undergraduate studies, I was exploring illustration, painting, all of which still informs my work today. But then I did this printmaking internship and I was like, whoa, printmaking can do a lot for you. And so, spent the next 5 years outside of school just working to make ends meet. And then I came back to grad school and I came back as a sculpture major. And about semester in, my instructor was noticing I was spending a lot more time in the printmaking lab. And so yet again, that siren call of printmaking brought me back. The kind of prints that I do are ephemeral prints. They're prints that are not meant to last. I make the prints out of dust, pulverized materials that I've gathered from specific places, usually in reference to whatever series it's from or whatever the content of the work is. But ultimately it is dust. And so whenever I started working with dust, it was inspired by years and years of doing custodial labor, sweeping, mopping, scrubbing, just learning to clean and maintain spaces. And I just started gathering this substance, this amalgamation of substances called dust, that I just found myself just so drawn to, just in terms of its conceptual quality, its material qualities. I knew I wanted to work with it at some point. Whenever I started exploring what kind of prints I could make with dust, I started at first with stencils, and my first exploration into this material was in direct reference to that custodial labor. I always was charmed by the idea of what it means to maintain a space, what it means to clean something. I see it as kind of like this dialogue with time, where we clean, and I don't know if any of you ever have this thought, but why am I cleaning this when if it's just going to get dirty again? But that's precisely why we engage in these practices and these kind of cleansing rituals. Is that it is to work with time, to exert a certain amount of control up to a point where eventually we have to let go and let the thing get dirty again, in which we exert control again, and we kind of engage in this cycle. Where we have the static idea of what a space ought to be, that ideal cleanliness, but we'll never truly reach it, but we always strive for it. And that kind of I thought was very poetic to me, especially just as a fluid being in a fluid world that's constantly changing. Coming to terms with change can be a little challenging, especially if it's very dramatic change, as our bodies grow and decay. They can cause a lot of problems for us just conceptually, but it's something I wanted to address quite directly. In case in point, I have this poor dead friend here that I found on the floor of my studio, and I wanted to pay homage to it. That print lasted about 3 hours before it was swept up, which is very, I think, thematic. It's designed based off of push brooms, which gather and sweep up dust, and I imagine it was a push broom that swept this friend and the dust up. So that was something I was really thinking about. But as I was working more and more with stencils, I was trying to think to myself, well, how can I get more detail out of this? How can I get more of an impact out of this? So I started experimenting with screen printing with dust. which essentially is a very, very fancy stencil. Whenever I was first engaging with this, I was being a little experimental with the content. I was experimenting if I could translate some photographs to the work, and that's something I came back to and explored a little bit later on. But in this first print, I was experimenting with layering multiple layers of dust on top of itself. Eventually, I got to the point where I am now, where I screen print using the CMYK process of printing, which, for those of you unaware, CMYK is a process of printing where you use just 4 colors, cyan, magenta, yellow, and key, or black, to get a variety of different hues and shades and tints out of just those 4 ink colors, and you can get like wonderfully photographic images just based off of that process. My whole process on top of that is I needed to get those colors. So I really wanted to go back to my roots, and so for this series I was sweeping up my studio space and my home just to gather more and more dust. I have buckets of what I call floor dust, which is just kind of like the discarded remnants of whatever the environment was. So there's clay dust in there, there's wood dust, there's fibers, there's people dust, there's bugs. It's all sorts of things, all the discarded like little bits that we have shed off over the years, all like compiled into this one substance. I gather it all up, I filter out all the bug legs and hairs out of it, and then I dye it with screen printing ink to make sure that it matches like the CMYK process as close as I can. And then I lay it out, I let it dry, and then I pulverize it and pulverize it and pulverize it until it gets fine enough to fit through a screen. The result is, I think, like pretty nice. I get these very like detailed images just out of these 4 colors. But one of the most profound like influences of this work is Tibetan Buddhist sand mandalas. For those of you unaware, like groups of Tibetan Buddhists will gather, create a sand mandala from hand, also completely ephemeral, and kind of like an homage to, depends on the group, it's sometimes an homage to like interfaith like community or hope or like compassion. It kind of runs the gamut of like a lot of Buddhist philosophy, but it's that kind of Buddhist philosophy that really inspired my like current pursuits, especially themes of non-attachment and ephemerality and embracing change. So a lot of my earlier works were a little derivative, I'd argue, a little bit like borrowing from that culture in terms of the imagery. And yet I kind of say like I cheat because I use screen printing and they do it by hand. They both have very different formal qualities. The sand that they use has this beautiful shimmer. My dust is very grimy, grungy, desaturated. But it was still something that I wanted to kind of push a little bit beyond. What I really enjoyed, though, was just that mandala shape. The mandala kind of like manifests in a variety of different cultures. Something about like the symmetry, the geometry, the how like the composition corresponds to itself gives us like both overwhelming impact, but also invites you to kind of come in and sit with it to the point where you can really invest yourself within like the entire like piece. So whenever I was like really thinking about what does like this practice mean to me, I again just couldn't help but escape my roots of like sweeping and mopping and dusting. Something about that act of cleaning, that repetitive, simple ritual kind of got me into a space where I could relax, which is saying a lot for me because I'm very anxious by nature. So the mandalas I constructed out of the tools that I use here are just like just a simple straw broom. This is a feather duster, or a variety of versions of feather dusters, and I found myself just finding these tools as kind of like my bridge to peace, my bridge to meditation. And I wanted to be very clear about what it was. So much about my work, I think it has this tactile quality to it that it can be like lost within photographs. So I want to be very like abundantly clear, like this is dust, this is colored dust, it's only the 4 colors coming together to create something that hopefully is beautiful and that we impose some kind of value to. Whenever it, like I talk about value in relation to this work, it's kind of important for me, who's like born in a fairly like well-off family, and then whenever I went off on my own, I experienced my first time being financially vulnerable, kind of like doing like the grunt work, like custodial labor and things like that. And then trying to make something of that and showing that like even like stuff that comes from the dirt of the earth can still have this profound value just by arranging it in the right way. So I think like framing like the work, like how it's composed and how it like takes this normally discarded like substance that mostly finds its place in the trash bin and then elevating it to a fine art status is something in like I don't want to escape. It also makes making the work very cheap, which I still appreciate to this day. So it was something that I want to hold on to. But I also knew I was kind of like constraining myself in the mandala form. A lot of symmetry. I love my symmetry. I love my stability. I love things just having their place. But part of this work is also like a meditation on letting things go. Whenever I present the work, I always make sure that it's unprotected. That's how I think of it as most authentic. And that's because that anyone can come in and just scatter it. And that vulnerability and that like fragility, I think establishes this really like intimate connection between viewer and work that I don't think is super present with a lot of work that is meant to last. And so when I'm talking about value and importance, it's not just the arrangement of this material, but also its known limited lifespan. To this day, I haven't like preserved any of these prints. Whenever you see them, that's most likely the only time you'll get to see them in that state. And every print is unique because whenever I lay down a layer, it may not lay down correctly, or it may be a little splotchy in some areas. So each one, although it kind of like matches this rhythm of imagery, gets to the point of still having its own unique presence, especially in retrospect to like whoever's viewing it and whatever the environment is. So I was thinking to myself, let's get away from the mandala, let's get away from the symmetry as much as I can. So I was revisiting back to making kind of photographic work out of dust. And so that had me kind of like come to terms with what it means to have a photograph and what do photographs like really represent. They are kind of like locking an idea, a moment, a perspective in place, framing it very clearly and just giving you this one slice of this like multifaceted moment in time. So I'm wondering to myself, how can I like match that with my appreciation for time as like a constantly flowing fluid medium. Explored doing like a self-portrait of myself. This was around the time where I got a pretty scary medical diagnosis. I had a nodule in my thyroid that appeared to be cancerous. So I'm thinking to myself about my mortality, my body in constant decay, and how that would inform my life moving forward from that. Thankfully, I had that removed and things are okay for now, so no need to worry for now. But, you know, it's something I think that hangs over a lot of our heads, just the idea of us having a limited lifespan on this earth, and so how do we make the most of every moment, or do we need to? Speaking of the earth, hold on. Okay, this was the only video we didn't check. Dang. It's fine. It's made of dust. I'm sure you're aware. There's a string, and I pull on it, and it makes this really nice pattern. But yeah, so like I'm thinking to myself, like, what else is something that we really ought to appreciate? What do we take for granted? What is kind of like beyond like the world of the static and the human made? And I was kind of drawn to the natural world. So whenever I get stressed out, if I'm not cleaning, I'm going on walks throughout nature. Because nature, the language of nature, I think, is change. The language of humans, I think, we like our foundations. We like things to have a set definition. We like to strive for like solid ideas and concepts to make communication meaningful. But nature seems to just do its own thing. It's kind of operating on its own system, and my work or my observation is I don't think we're separate from that system. I think we're very much inherently part of it, that we ourselves are capable of that language of change, but we still try to strive for that static idea. So whenever I'm taking my walks through nature and something comes over me and inspires me to take a photograph, I started to realize a lot of these photographs kind of talk about change in some way, change, transition, ephemerality. And I wanted to turn that into work. So for the series that I have in the EPINK right now is composed of all those moments that I kind of identified in nature. This one being the first one, I wanted to show you all just like my general process of photograph to idea. And you can see I'm still not completely broken away from the mandala just yet. It's my comfort zone. I really enjoy it. But taking like just this simple image of a monarch butterfly who is just relaxing on these ivy leaves, and like seeing what ideas kind of naturally flow out from whenever I'm looking at this picture, the butterfly being a very significant symbol of change, and turning that into one of my designs. So what I do is I take the photograph, I do some ideation in my sketchbook, turn that into a digital file, and then I translate that to dust. So whenever I was looking at this series, and I was still working with my floor dust, which was sourced from all these human environments, such as studios, homes, warehouses, I wanted to kind of change things up a little bit and see what else I could do to help inform the work. So eventually what I started doing was sourcing the dust from my walks. So I would gather up earth on these walks, bring them into the studio, and through the same system of pulverization and dyeing and pulverizing, I was able to turn that into the work itself. So I was looking at like what else I could be doing with these photographs. How do we interact with them? What do they inspire? And that's where a lot of like the designs, the patterns, the solid elements, the geometry comes from, is kind of my reaction to whatever was going through my mind during that moment. And I was thinking to myself, like, is this something I still want to preserve? Is this like, how do I share this? How do I make this accessible? How do I take these very private moments in the natural world and bring them into the concrete world? And I knew like dust prints were still a very valuable part of that, but I was also thinking about embracing what happens to the prints throughout an exhibition. A lot of things happen to these things depending on like the environment of the gallery. If there's a slight breeze, the dust will slowly start to trickle away. If there's a particularly bold child in the exhibition, I'll probably find some little fingerprints. Some of my favorite are the bugs that like to crawl across these things. That natural world, again, talking in its own language of change onto like these attempts at preserving these moments. And again, that natural world was going to like cause things to disrupt, decay, dissolve, but also I think grow. So I have little bug tracks here that I love bugs. They like they're a much better artist than I am, I would say here. But also people tracks. From what I've been told, I have some people tracks on the some pieces in the exhibition already. Mouse tracks and just all sorts of like life just coming in, breathing that life back into the work is something that I really want to preserve. So whenever I'm asked, how do you sell your work? How do you preserve your work? I'm lucky enough not to have to do that to make a living right now. I'm also very lucky to enjoy teaching, so that helps solve that problem. But if I were to do that, I feel that it would kind of compromise the idea of change, because so much about this is being present with the work, being encouraged to like invest in it. And so if you have a chance to view the work now, I just say don't sneeze on it, but be mindful, spend time with it, and don't be afraid of it. So like with that inspiration of like Buddhist ideas of presence and awareness, I like to encourage that instead of the other way of encouraging presence, which is usually, I don't want to touch it, I'm scared of this thing. So I encourage us, don't treat it as sacred, treat it as what it is, just a meaningful moment in this one part of time. But I won't take up too much of your time. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it.
Do we have any questions for Anthony?
Do you think that your drawnness to printmaking has to go back to that repetitiveness?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Printmaking itself has a very ritualistic nature to it. it's a very nice tool to use here in terms of like being able to make the work accessible. But its strongest ability, I think, the ability to recreate a work like over like multiple times, is something I do resist a little bit. As you'll notice, there's no like multiple prints of the same print in the show. I think that might compromise the idea of its value, but that's why I'm able to be kind of like so go with the flow on it. I think it helps me, and it's kind of like this middle ground between like ephemeral work, but also work that can be repeated again. Kind of like a performance. Yeah.
How do you travel with it to put it on display?
I travel with my screen, so I install the work on site, which causes like a lot of restrictions. I've had to learn to like be flexible in some areas, but I've also just got a lot of screens. Each of these take like 4 screens, and so it's a lot of bulk. Yeah. Yeah.
You touched on it a little, but do you want to talk about like sight a little bit and how that influences what you do? And I'm just curious about like, does it matter where the dust comes from? Any dust worthy?
Oh, I think all dust is worthy, yeah. But I also think it's really important to me to determine like what material I'm pulverizing. Like the floor dust is in direct like relation to me sweeping the dust up. The earth is like in direct relation to me like taking these walks. But I'll pulverize just about anything that can be pulverized. Eggshell, ceramic, what else? I love people dust. People are disgusted by it, and we can go into that, but yeah, whenever like I'm thinking of like a piece or a series, I do want to be very cognizant of what dust I'm using for it.
You can visit my studio anytime.
I've gotten so many offers to do it, and hey, I'm down for it if it's a gold mine of dust, but I'm particular about my dust. Like, oh, this won't work. Yeah.
I'm curious with those different dusts. I noticed that, and I know some of this is each one's being unique, and so you have differences in terms of like one color is too strong than the other or something like that. But as you shifted from like the floor dust to the earth dust, I feel like I saw like a little bit of a color shift where it gets darker. And so I mean, clearly you're embracing it, but how does that affect it in terms of like, say you have a big, very like red clay type dirt, and where that might impact how the yellow is present in it?
Yeah. So earth comes in very like different shapes and sizes. I'm also very fortunate to have a lot of ceramicist friends to help determine like what dust would work best. And I usually deal with that like after I've mixed it and it's dried and it's fully pulverized. I get a good sense about what the tone is, the value, and so I'll accommodate that on the digital side. So I'll be like, okay, the cyan's hitting really strong here. Let me tone down the cyan in the digital side. And so whenever I translate it to a CMYK image, it does help with that, but it can only do so much, because if the entire dust is like darker overall, I'll usually like embrace that, because again, I like to be, for the most part, pretty transparent about like what this is made of, and so having the earth have that kind of like earthier quality in comparison to like the cleaning supplies being so vibrant is something I think both matches with the imagery, but also like is pretty like helps encourage like that investigation to what is this made of.
Other questions? I wanted to ask you about what, so are most of these photographs you're collecting on your walks, or like why not a drawing? Why a photograph?
Yeah. So photographs, they're kind of like what has been, like they're already in reference to the past. And it's kind of reminds me of like a memory, but it's a memory that we can revisit multiple times. So I was curious, what does it mean if we have a memory that we don't know if we can revisit, at least not in this very direct way? And do we put more value in the memory? How do we try to preserve a memory? Photography is a great way of doing that, but usually because the photographs are meant to last, especially in like a digital age where they get multiplied, copied, multiplied. What does it mean when you have a very fragile photograph in front of you? And I still bring in that illustrative quality at the end. For one, I'm an illustrator, I can't help it. But this is like kind of like my ruminations on like my reaction to the photograph, which Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Was it hard to move, like as someone who likes to draw, is it hard to not use drawings? Like, do you struggle with that?
I think the photographs also have like a stronger impact. That self-portrait seems to draw a lot of like people's like gaze a lot more quickly than my drawings, and as heartbreaking as it is, because I do enjoy drawing, it is an interesting phenomenon, and so like it's something about like that photorealistic quality that maybe I'm just not a good drawer that really like captures people, and I wanted to kind of like have a dialogue with that, and so I do that through the illustrations.
We have plenty of time, so do anyone else have questions? Kat?
What kind of pigment are you using to dye your desk?
Yeah, it's screen printing ink, Speedball brand. It's processed cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, and that's what you use just to make normal like CMYK screen prints. Yeah.
And you and I had talked that it takes a long time to dry. Is that correct?
Oh yes, yeah. So whenever like I mix it in, it becomes very pasty. So I lay it out on a glass slab. I stipple it to like increase the surface area, to increase it, or help it dry. Stick it out in the sun to let it bake. And whenever it's like bone dry, then it can pulverize really easily. And sometimes I will do other screen printing inks, like for instance the floor pieces that I have at the Ep Ink. That's both like just the normal earth pulverized, and then the earth that was made of previous prints. I collect them all. After I'm done with them, I sweep them up. And so it usually turns into a very rich brown. And then I wanted a green, so I just made green dust for that one.
Other questions?
Yeah.
Has there ever been a time, like in the middle of working on something, where you kind of lose the motivation to continue it or finish it?
The most challenging part would be the illustration part, because I love my organizational systems. I like making effective compositions. So I will, and like digital media is both a blessing and a curse, because I can change anything I want by the smallest little bit. But because I can do that, I do it a lot. So that, like, you know, halfway through a design where I'm just like, this isn't working, this isn't really speaking to me, I need to take a break, I need to walk away. That's usually when it comes up. But were you also thinking about like the printing process, or?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, whenever I've done one layer, I'm doing the rest. Like like I just need to like knock all those out as much as I can. The challenging part there is for an exhibition like the one at the Ep Ink, where it's multiple prints. It can be challenging to like circulate the screens and like lay out some prints and then leave it overnight and then hope that a bug doesn't crawl across it until like it's being presented. Sometimes it happens, and that's part of the work. It's an exercise for myself just to let things go a little bit more. Yeah.
Do you develop your illustrations all the way fully and then move it over to digital, or are you just kind of developing your layout, as a sketch and then finishing it digitally?
Yeah, I would say like it's mostly like a scaffolding, and then whenever I'm in the digital realm, then I can start to kind of fuss a little bit. So the layout is like mostly the major geometric elements, and then like maybe some patterns on the side, or like some illustrations about like elements I want to include, like plants, bees, things like that. Whenever I'm in the digital realm, then I can really like get in and start like adding all the detail that I like to add. And I always add way too much because it doesn't render fully in dust.
Other questions?
Here's a question.
Oh, what?
Come back.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Katie.
I was just wondering, how much dust are you dyeing at a time? Like, do you have like a huge like floor that you spread it all out on to dry, or like are you doing more like small batch?
Oh, should I be so lucky? Yeah, I usually do like relatively small batches, but I can do that because the prints don't take a lot of dust, honestly. Like whenever I sweep them up, they like are about like I don't know, 2-3 grams worth of dust. So I can make it last a long time. The tricky part is that in order to get it to go through the screen effectively, the dust needs to be both like small enough to fit through the screen, but also large enough to agitate the screen. So I have a lot of dust that doesn't go through the screen because it's my agitating dust, and I need a good mixture of both, because whenever I'm running through like a print, if it's too small, the dust will want to stick to itself and the screen, and so it won't want to go through evenly. But if it's too large, it won't go through the screen. So finding a good way to like maintain that mixture is usually whenever I'm like, okay, not a lot of dust is going through, I need to pulverize some more. Yeah.
That kind of answered some of my question, but I was kind of interested in the physical aspects of this process, the actual printing itself. Do you have any like limitations, or would you like to speak on that?
Yeah. Oh, it comes with a lot of limitations. The biggest one is that I can't have it flat on the surface, because if it touches the surface, it's going to pick up whatever dust layers are on there. And so I just have like just a 1/16 of an inch spacers all around it, just to give it that little bit of room. And it helps because not only does CMYK like require like kind of transparent inks to get the same effects, those like it's just made up of very tiny little colored dots, and there's a little bit of transparency to help get like coax out like colors like green and orange. But because dust isn't transparent, having that little bit of space lets the dust spread out ever so slightly, so I can still get that same effect too. So it's kind of like also helpful in that way. But if I run too much dust through a screen, or if I run it on the wrong surface, it starts to build up a static charge, and so the dust won't go down, it will suck right back up to the screen. So I have to lay it on like this plastic veneer. It's melamine, whatever, like what countertops are often made out of. But if I'm careful, I can lay it on things that hold a static charge, like plexiglass. And you saw the one where I was batting it from behind. That was on plexi, and you can see I could hold it up 90 degrees from the ground, and it would still stick. So I'm still exploring other elements of like printing in terms of surface and environment. So like humid environments seem to coax the dust, or like encourage the dust to stick to itself really well. Dry environments, it seems to be a little bit looser. But as I like show in more and more places, I start to learn more and more about like, oh, well, this isn't going to work here. And there's been a lot of like last minute adaptations I've had to do to the process just to get it to work. But I've become so familiar with it, I can kind of like problem solve on the spot now with it.
Other questions?
Yeah.
Which one is your favorite piece over the years?
Oh, definitely that butterfly one. So yeah, it's the one that's been shown the most, I think, because it's symmetrical, very nice for design, and because like it's got such close ties to like that mandala shape that has my heart. But also like I kind of have like empathy on overdrive. So whenever I see like a creature, especially a creature with such a like limited lifespan in comparison to our lifespans, it's just like I feel, I don't know, like this unspoken connection with it. Yeah, but definitely my favorite.
And that probably makes sense why you make ephemeral art anyway.
Yeah.
Right? Like fleeting life, short life.
Oh yeah,
Your
yeah.
art also has a short life in the moment it's made.
Yeah, for sure.
Other questions? Thank you, Anthony.
To support the ESU Art Forum program, please visit emporia.edu/art. Click on the Events tab, scroll down to the Art Forum link and click. Then scroll down to the Support Art Forum button and click. Finally, choose your donation level and click on the Continue button to complete the process. We appreciate your support.